Okay, well, it's 10:30 and my technology seems to be firing on all cylinders. So why don't we get going? I want to welcome you all to our continuing digital town hall series with SDI Digital Refuge. My name is Matt Whitney. I'm the creative director for SDI. And I just, again, want to welcome you, especially if you are new. If you haven't been in one of these town hall conversations before, thank you for being here and for jumping in and stepping into something a little unfamiliar. I hope that you feel some sense of community and connection through this medium and in this time. Let's see, I just want to let you know that we have two ways that you can interact with us and Brother Jamal. So if you have a question for Brother Jamal, you can use the Q&A, the question and answer space. And I will try to filter those to Brother Jamal as we go. I usually can't get to all the questions, but I do my best. Secondly is the webinar chat window. And that has just been such a lovely space for all of us to share various insights and sharing, and it's just been really rich. So feel free to jump in there and to offer whatever it is that you're bringing to this space. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Brother Jamal for an opening meditation to help us kind of center into this space together. So welcome, Brother Jamal. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brother Matt, and thank you for this beautiful opportunity. So let us immediately get into this universal practice of silence. I say universal because there's no such thing as a Muslim silence, Jewish silence, Hindu silence, Christian silence. So gently close your eyes, please, wherever you are. And then focus on the nostril. And simply be present with the breath. As you inhale and as you exhale. And then let go of this. Kindly focus on the heart. And if it works for you, touch your heart and listen to this beautiful revelation that came to the Prophet Muhammad in a dream where God says, beloved one, I cannot be contained in the space of the earth. I cannot be contained in the space of the heavens, but I can be contained in the space of the pure, loving heart. So for a few seconds, just touching the heart and connecting to mystery within. And before coming into awareness, simply connect to the beat of the heart. And so, my friends, feeling connected, bonded with mystery, gently open your eyes. Thank you, Brother Matt.
Thank you. So we've titled this town hall conversation together, Opening Your Heart, Intimacy with the Divine. And Brother Jamal is a master of this. And I have come to know him over the last couple of years with my work through SDI. He is one of the interfaith amigos, performs throughout North America and the world with his amigo counterparts. He is the interfaith minister for Interfaith Community Chapel in Seattle, Washington. And over the past few months, I've had the privilege of having Brother Jamal be a supervisor to me. So I am a spiritual guide in training, and I go see Brother Jamal once a month. I bike over to his chapel in Ballard and receive supervision and wisdom, and especially encouragement. So you all have probably experienced, as I have, we have highs and we have lows on this spiritual journey, and I am often coming in to see Jamal as kind of a dried up husk of a spiritual being, wallowing in existential angst or just feeling kind of low, and really wanting to provide spiritual presence for people that I am companioning, and sometimes not knowing how or not remembering how. And after 60 or 90 minutes with Brother Jamal, I come away just like on fire. I'm just like, oh my gosh, like God is in everything. It's like burning inside me, and it's in the trees and the blossoms and the path. And I go home and I'm like, my son, like hug him. And so you just have such a gift for awakening this divine presence in us. And so I thought we could just kind of frame this conversation today around awakening to the divine. And I use the name God, and that is a name. You may have another name for the ground of all being, and I just want to welcome that from all of you, however you name that. And maybe just offer us some wisdom and some practice around how we can remember, how we can recall our presence with the divine, and how we can help our companions awaken to that as well. And so with that, I would love to give some time to you to share. So Brother Jamal, take it away.
First of all, once again, Brother Matt, thank you so much for your very gracious words. And I want to tell you this wonderful saying in the Islamic tradition, that the character of a wali means friend of God, actually. The character of a wali, friend of God, is based on nothing more than graciousness and generosity. So thank you for being a wali and being so gracious and so generous, Brother Matt. It touches me. Thank you. So my friends, I thought maybe we can start with something which I said earlier is so universal, just the practice of silence, becoming still. I love the insight of the Sufi masters who say that silence is not the absence of sound. It is the absence of the little self, the I, me. So can I do silence? Slowly letting the I and me flow out of me. It's not the absence of sound, it's the absence of the little self. The second insight I like very much about silence is, this is by Rumi, who says, silence is the language of God. Silence is the language of God. Everything else is a poor translation. So how beautiful when we become silent. And Rumi goes on to say, therefore, he says, I implore you, be silent. Be silent so that the Lord who gave you language may speak. Be silent so that the Lord who gave you language may speak. For as he or she, divinity, devised a lock, so as the Lord devised a lock, he also made a key. As he devised a door and a lock, God also made a key. So a lot of benefit, a lot of beauty in just becoming still. And then many techniques, maybe one day we can do a session, Brother Matt, on just the different techniques of becoming authentically still. Be still and know that I am God, as the Christians say. So that's the first practice, which really behooves all of us to do as often as possible, just to become still. And what is important is, all the great masters say, don't tell yourself that, okay, when I have time, I will become still. I'll practice meditation. It never works. Better to be realistic and say, for example, I only have in my busy schedule 10 minutes, 5 minutes to practice meditation. Please focus on that and build your daily schedule around that. Just 5 minutes, 10 minutes, but build your schedule around that so that you really practice silence. So one last thing about silence, the Sufi masters say, if you really want to understand the value, the beauty of silence, know that we're like fish on the bank of the waters, on the bank of the river, thrashing and quivering on the banks. We're like fish out of water. And from time to time, we need to dive into those oceans of silence that is life-giving, that is nourishing. Okay, that's as much as I wanted to say about the practice of silence. In the second point, in the Sufi tradition, the Quran says that the essence of spirit, divinity, is compassion. So virtually all of the 114 chapters of the Quran starts with Bismillah ir-Rahman ir-Rahim, meaning in the name of God, of divinity, of spirit, who is boundlessly compassionate, infinitely merciful. So a Bedouin once asked the Prophet Muhammad, what is the secret to this invocation? And Prophet Muhammad famously said, this is actually the secret to life. And what is the secret? That can you understand the beauty and can you practice this beautiful divine attribute of compassion? And he said, the secret is, can you be compassionate with yourself and with others? So once again, in the Sufi tradition, all the wisdom of the Quran is distilled into the first chapter called Surah Fatiha. All that is distilled into the invocation, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and that is distilled into one divine attribute, mercy, gentleness, compassion for yourself and others. So a lot of my workshops is really about understanding the beauty, the majesty, the power of compassion, and how to apply it to oneself and to others. So the first thing is to really become aware of the power of this divine attribute of compassion. How do you explain that? Not only Islam, but also other traditions, they use the metaphor of water. There's nothing as soft and yielding as water is, but for overcoming the hardest, there's nothing as powerful as water is, meaning the person who is gentle, merciful, compassionate, is possessed of raw, authentic strength. Then also, wherever water falls, life flourishes, meaning the person who is gentle, compassionate, is life bestowing. So to summarize, the power of mercy and gentleness and compassion, it is authentic strength and it is life bestowing. To just drink that in, allow that to, as the Sufi masters say, to perfume your heart, the vibration of mercy, compassion, gentleness for myself and others. So now, what are some practices for compassion for yourself? One of my favorite practices is called sacred naming. The truth is, we're always talking to ourselves, but a lot of the talk is negative. So to counter that, the antidote is do a spiritual intervention. Can you think of a word or sentence you can add to your name. You don't have to. That if you do the spiritual intervention by using that word of endearment, you'll find that the content of the conversation changes, the direction of the conversation changes. Sacred naming. So for example, when I was young, my parents said, son, is there a word or sentence you can use in addressing yourself? Because we do a lot of self-talk. That when you use that word or sentence, it evokes mercy, gentleness. And my grandfather used to call himself brother. His name was Heda, Hedayatullah, for short Heda, brother Heda. So I tried that. I do this spiritual intervention of saying, but brother Jamal, and I use the tone of mercy, gentleness. And immediately I find I become filled with a wave of mercy, compassion. The negativity changes, it gets dissolved, it gets directed in a more life-affirming direction. And the content of my conversation with self also changes. So I and Brother Jamal have constant conversations. And I can tell you, I am never bored as a result. So I ask you, what is a word or sentence you could add to yourself, that you could address and talk to yourself? Because we are always talking to ourselves, but do it consciously. So I use Brother Jamal, you can say my precious child, beloved, sweetheart. Some say I can't think of anything, but I remember my grandmother used to call me Piroshki. So now I use, in my self-talk, I intervene, I say Piroshki, and immediately I feel a wave of mercy and compassion. Okay, so that's one technique called sacred naming. How do you show compassion for others? The great teachers say, please remember that if you're angry with someone, you're angry at their behavior, not their essence. The essence is sacred, sacrosanct. It's Christ nature, Buddha nature, Elohim nature. Always take the right action, but keep that discernment, that distinction in your heart and mind between behavior and being. There's a great Sufi master, Kabir, who's a Muslim and Hindu. He says, don't allow yourself to be abused. Protect yourself. Take the right action. But as you take the right action, I beg you, I implore you, do not keep this person's essence out of your heart. And just this discernment as you take the right action, discernment between behavior and being, the essence of the person, has the power to shift heaven and earth. So that's always talk to yourself, but Brother Jamal, I'm angry at the person's behavior, not that person's being, but I must take the right action. But keep the discernment in your heart and mind as you take the right action. Okay, a third technique called sacred holding. It is really about honoring all our feelings. All feelings are sacred. We give them different names: joy, passion, relief, contentment, anger, jealousy, pain. But all feelings are vibrations, they're energies begging our attention. And to be compassionate with oneself means to embrace not only my 10,000 joys of life, but to embrace my 10,000 sorrows of life. Carl Jung, he famously said, would you have the courage and the grace to kiss the demons and dragons within you? That is how they turn into a prince or princess. So this is a sort of longish technique, but the idea is know that all feelings are sacred. They're begging to be kissed. So for example, if I experienced rage, what do I do myself personally? Of course, I make sure I don't do anything that I would regret. I restrain myself, but at the earliest opportunity, I close my eyes and I go through these different steps. I say, Brother Jamal, you experienced rage. It's okay. It's okay. Brother Jamal, I'm here with you. It's simply begging your attention. Give yourself permission to feel those feelings that you call rage. It's okay. I'm here with you. This is for purposes of healing. That's number one. Number two, where in your body are you experiencing that which you call rage? You see, every feeling has a physical sensation. Is it here? Is it here? Is it here? Maybe it's here. Number three is with compassion for yourself. Be present with that difficult feeling. No need to fix it. No need to analyze it, but a great need just to be present with it. If it moves, move with it. So just be present, aware of that physical sensation, and stay with it. The next step is ask it some questions. Do you have a message for me? Is there a secret you want to share? And just be present, asking that question with love and respect. The answer might come, might not come. But the key is to acknowledge and say those words with love and respect. Do you have a message for me? The next question is, how may I love you? How may I befriend you? And just stay with that question. And the last part is, I said the physical sensation was here. Make an intention to breathe in and out to that part of you. This integrates that difficult feeling. So anger becomes transformed into an inner enthusiasm, fear into mindfulness, grief and sadness into a greater empathy. This is called sacred holding. And by the way, I do have small videos that explain the process, and maybe Brother Matt can direct you to those videos. So there's so many different techniques. This is called sacred holding. Let me move on to awareness, the whole idea of awareness. We all know the idea of, can I be aware? Can I be present? Can I be in the now? So how do you explain the beauty, the power, the majesty of being in the now? I love that story, a Buddhist story. It's also in Sufism and other traditions, where a monk has a toothache. I don't know if you had toothache. I've had toothaches. It feels terrible. The entire being, the entire body, physically, emotionally, mentally, feels, out of whack, out of alignment. And the monk says, if only this toothache went away, I'd be so happy. Then he turns to some of the monks, not very happy. He says, do you have a toothache? Do you have a toothache? Do you have a toothache? Why aren't you happy? It's because you don't realize this very moment is a non-toothache moment. For me, that illustrates the power, the majesty, the beauty of being, of understanding what to be present, to be in the now is. The danger is, of course, that we are bifurcated, fragmented by a regret of the past or an anxiety about the future. I am not in the present. I'm missing out on the party, as it were. So it does not mean that you cannot think about the past. We need to learn from the past. It does not mean you cannot worry about the future. We need to plan for the future. What it means is, if you are going into the past or the future, do it consciously. If you flit from one to the other unconsciously, without mindfulness, it'll feel very, very tiring, fatiguing. It'll drain you. It could be as simple as, and I've tried this, if I'm worrying about something in the past or the future, I say, Brother Jamal, this is sacred naming, I noticed that you are flitting from one to the other. I tell you what, let's say if I'm worrying a lot about the future, I say, Brother Jamal, you're worrying so much about the future, I give you 10 minutes, worry as much as you want to about the future. But when 10 minutes are over, I say, Brother Jamal, come back in the present moment. Similarly, if I am regretting something in the past, I give myself 5 minutes, regret as much as you want to about the past. I am being conscious about it. And what are some techniques of being in the present moment? Many, many techniques. The Buddha was asked that question. He said for him, when he finds he's not in the present moment, he focuses on his nostril and is present with the breath as he inhales and he exhales. And this brings him back in the present moment. I do self-talk. There's a wonderful saying, a Sufi is a son or daughter of the present moment. So when I'm not being present, I just do talk like I say, Brother Jamal, come on, a Sufi is a son of the present moment. Come back into the present moment. And I find myself coming back. Okay, I'm noticing time is moving on, so very quickly, I want to also get to your questions, and I think Brother Matt wants to talk to me. Can I just go on for a few more minutes, Brother Matt, or should we stop here?
No, please do.
Okay, and you let me know when to stop. You know, I'm from the East. I talk and talk and talk and talk till somebody snores.
This
but everybody's
is
muted.
As far as I'm concerned, just keep going.
Thank you. Okay, so another beautiful technique of awareness is self-awareness. Prophet Muhammad, he said, know thyself and you shall know thy sustainer. He also said, die before you die. Die to your false self before you die a physical death. Really about the of every religion that I am my personality, but I'm also my divine spark, my Christ nature, Buddha nature, Elohim nature, Allah nature. How do I get to that? Well, one is by peeling the layers of my ego, by shining the light of compassionate awareness on myself, self-witnessing. Realizing that my personality is simply a bundle of conditioned reactions to life's circumstances. I repeat, my personality is simply a bundle of conditioned reactions to life's circumstances. It is me, but it is not the real me. The real me is my divine spark. So as Prophet Muhammad said, know thyself and you shall know thy sustainer. So in Sufism, as in other traditions, the practice is to switch on the light of self-witnessing. Like the Hindus say, in the Hindu scriptures, we're like two birds on the branch of a tree. One bird is just pecking away on the fruit. The fruit could be sweet, could be bitter. This is a story of our lives, but I'm also the other bird perched on the same branch, just witnessing. So can I make an intention to switch on the light of self-witnessing and observe myself and become aware of my ego aspects of my personality? And it is the light of awareness that will diminish that. So the practice, the simple practice, in my pocket is always I carry a piece of paper. This is a practice I do since childhood. So in the course of the day, if I find that I got unusually angry, jealous, bitter, I, of course, restrain myself, but I make a note of that. I also make a note of the times I was gracious, generous, divine qualities. At the end of the day, I look at both those columns and I say, thank you, God. I express gratitude for my awareness of those ego traits I became mindful of in the course of the day. And this light of awareness begins to diminish it. Then I look at the column on my divine qualities. Maybe I spoke the truth when it was inconvenient. And I express gratitude and pray, may these qualities flourish. This practice of becoming aware of your ego traits, your divine qualities flowing through you, by the compassionate light of self-awareness, really begins to diminish the negative traits and expand the divine qualities. Very quickly, I'm noticing running out of time. Simple practice, like for example, a Bedouin came to the Prophet Muhammad and said, all these practices, the legislation of the faith has become too complicated for me. Just give me one simple practice. And the Prophet Muhammad said, famously, he said, for you, keep your tongue forever moistened with the name of Allah. In the course of the day, for days and weeks and months throughout the year, just use a word that is sacred. Allah, 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 a mantra. So in my workshop, people say, but why would that work? A sacred verse, like if you're a Buddhist, Om Mane Padme Hum. If you're a Hindu, like Gandhi, for him it was Rama, Rama. For me, it's Allah, Allah, La ilaha illallah. Why would it work? So all the traditions have the same answer, including Sufism. There's a vat of dye or a pot of color, D-Y-E. You take a cloth, you put it in the vat of dye, you take it out, it has a beautiful color, but over time it fades away. So what happens if you dip this cloth in the vat of dye again and again and again and again? There comes a time when this color becomes permanent, color fast. So if I dip myself in God consciousness, Allah, 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 or I do the practice of silence again and again and again, it works for a little bit, for a certain period of time. But if you persist, if you continue with that, it takes hold. It creates a shift within you. That's why it is a wonderful saying in Sufism, once the blush of the beloved graces you, once the blush of the beloved graces you, there's no going back to becoming a green apple. Mm. So Brother Matt, maybe just one more thing to say, because very critical, service, let's be of service. And truly, let me just quote that wonderful Nobel Prize winner in literature, Tagore from Bengal, who says, I slept and dreamt. Life was joy. I awoke and found life was service. I served, and lo, behold, service was joy. So Prophet Muhammad has a piece of advice. He says, do good deeds according to your capacity. Do good deeds according to your capacity. God never tires of giving rewards unless you tire of doing good deeds. The good deeds most loved by God are the ones that are done regularly, no matter how small they are. And the last point, community. We all need community. A wall standing alone is useless. Add to it other walls, it can support a roof, even a granary. Only when ink joins with a pen can the blank paper say something. But for authentic community, what is called a circle of love, Rumi says, please come out of the circle of time and enter the circle of love. We need people in our lives who pass 3 gateways. The first gateway is love. This member of your circle, is there love between you? Affection. Number 2, is there trust? Because without trust, it is not possible to be vulnerable. For a real circle of love, community, there has to be vulnerability. And the third one is truth, a love of truth. Like the Buddha said, find friends who love the truth. My friends, it's very difficult to find that circle in our lives. But the Sufis say you can create what is called an inner circle of love in your imaginal realm, where you go to your sacred sanctuary and you summon anybody you want to who passes through those 3 gateways. The only limitation is your belief system, and just bask in the love they have for you. But let me not get into that. I'm getting deeper. Let me stop here. And Brother Matt, any questions?
Oh my gosh. Yes, several. But first of all, do you see what I mean? Like sitting with Brother Jamal is just like this soul nourishing activity. And so first of all, thank you. My heart is overflowing as I imagine it is for many of us. So let's move into some dialogue. And if you want to ask your questions, I've got a few already in the Q&A, and I will try to get to those. So I just want to come back to what you were speaking about at the beginning about silence being the language of God. And I know for myself, my whole life, I've been so hungry to find language for God. And so when I go into silence, it's hard for me to kind of turn off that language. My mind is speaking. It's saying, where are you, God? What should I be listening for? How are you appearing to me now? And my own language, my own self-talk starts to kind of distract me. Do you have any, what I want to ask is, how do you attune yourself to that silence? And what do you do when that self-talk starts to get in the way?
Yes, thank you for that wonderful question. I love the phrase of the Hindus that when you say, okay, be silent, go still, that's easy to say, but what happens is you experience what is called the rattle of the cage of monkeys. This thought, that thought, this image, that image, So how do you still that? There are many techniques. Let me just make one quick technique that the Hindus talk about, the technique of the mantra. And there's a history behind that, if I may just quickly tell you. In India, festivals are very popular, especially having elephants in the festival. The problem is the trunk of the elephant is always swaying. It lashes at the spectators. Some flimsy carts with food on them get overturned. So almost as a joke, finding some solutions, some of these people went to the swamis in the mountains and said, do you have any technique that can stop the swaying of the trunk of the elephant? And to their surprise, these gurus said, yes, we do. They said, what do we do? They said, place a stick of any size in the trunk of the elephant. See what happens. So they put a stick in the trunk of the elephant, and lo and behold, it curled up the stick, and the swaying became less and less and less and less. They said, how did you know this? They said, well, we've been doing this with the minds of human beings for centuries. And what is that stick? A mantra, a word or sentence. In my silence, if I can focus on a word or sentence and just repeat that again and again and again and again and again, that swaying will become less and less and less and less and less. So that is one very good technique. And that's, if I understand, is one of the basis of transcendental meditation, to plant a word or sentence, focus on it gently, and repeat it again and again and again and again and again.
Do you have one or two simple mantras that some of us beginners might try out, or do you recommend we experiment?
I recommend you experiment, because find a word or sentence that really, as Rumi says, splashes in your heart. I use Allah, La ilaha illallah. I sometimes use Om Mane Padme Hum, or the Hindu Soham Hamsa. I experiment. And then I've also been, when I was a student many decades ago, I was initiated into transcendental meditation, and they gave you a secret mantra. They say, don't reveal it to anybody else. So I have one, I just repeat that. But I really recommend trying different mantras, words or sentences that really resonate within you. And then stick with it. You can change it, but repeat it again and again and again and again and again and again. And those thoughts will diminish, and you'll go deeper and deeper and deeper into the mystery of silence.
Thank you. I want to start getting to some of these questions. Ruth asks us to share more about finding self-compassion. And this is something that I know I wrestle with, and that people that I companion wrestle with, is feeling just a sense of, it can be privilege or guilt about, the suffering in the world right now, and how to be present to that. And as you share, it begins with ourselves, with kind of being able to practice self-care and self-compassion. But I know that that's hard for a lot of us, and myself included. It can even sound kind of silly sometimes if I'm like, I love you. Like, that's one of the things you asked me to practice, is like, just say, I love you, and to even find in the sacred naming practice, a name of endearment or a term of endearment, not just for the holy, but for oneself. And I can be like, I love you, beloved, and then I'm like, that feels weird.
Yes, yes.
Do you have any recommendations or encouragements around that?
First of all, I want to tell you, of course, I share this technique of self-talk, and then also meditation, telling the heart, I love you. And many people tell me, it feels very squeamish. It just doesn't feel right. But after some years, they come back and say, that was the one technique that really transformed my life. So I would put it this way to those who say they are uncomfortable, which is absolutely understandable. I love that saying, which I think I might have said it, where in a dream, the words of God came to Prophet Muhammad, and the God said, beloved one, I cannot be contained in the space of the earth. I cannot be contained in the space of the heavens, but I can be contained in the space of the pure, loving heart. And so I tell my friends, if your belief system allows it, God is outside of you and also inside of you, inside your heart. That's a mystery. That divine heart is inside human heart. So as often as possible, for self-compassion, and really for being present, and really creating the groundwork for spiritual practices, knowing that Jesus, Buddha, Allah, whatever your term is also inside of you, inside your heart. So touch your heart as often as possible when expressing gratitude. If it helps, you're talking to the spirit within you, to divinity within you, when you tell your heart, I love you, I really love you, I love you. And Matt, let me tell you, I've been doing this practice of telling my heart, I love you, ever since I was 5 or 6 years old. And I can tell you with a sense of inner knowing that in times of difficulties, in times of a crisis, because I've told my heart so many times, I love you, in times of difficulty, I hear a voice that comes up that says, I love you. And I get very surprised, because did I say it? Where did it come from? But something comes up from within me that says, I love you. And everything becomes very centered. I become very hopeful. And metaphorically, many doors open up. So I know from my personal experience and the experience of friends who have done it for years, that if you tell your heart, I love you, it can be quite magical.
Yeah. There's sounds like a real sense of synchronicity with that practice, that the divine responds.
Yes.
To that mantra, to that prayer. Related to that, Susan asks, in sacred naming, was there a sense of opening up and letting the divine name you?
Well, in this case, I feel if I tell myself I love you, that spontaneous, effusive voice from within coming up and saying, I love you, I don't know what that voice is. Is it my higher self? Is it a spirit within me? All this is very mystery. I don't know how it works. But if I address myself as Brother Jamal, maybe it connects me to my higher self and it raises my vibration. And as I said, it opens up doors. How it works, I don't know really. But I do feel a connection with something greater than human personality. And life becomes much more joyous. So I should tell you, as I told you earlier, I truly never feel bored because I have this sacred naming. I and Brother Jamal have constant conversations, and I don't know who's talking to who, but it feels very good.
Yeah, thank you. That's powerful. It's just a powerful reminder of how simple it is to stick with the practice and to trust it.
And also the other practice of touching your heart as often as possible, particularly to express gratitude for things little or big. And I find just the practice of that physical touch gives a palpable connection to something mysterious inside the heart. And particularly, as I said, in moments of gratitude.
It was when we did it at the beginning, it was a moment of remembering for me. It was like, oh yeah, keep that up. Moving on. So one of my teachers, Jan Lundy, is here. Hi, Jan. And she asks, Brother Jamal, thank you for this beautiful teaching. Question, with so many people struggling with suffering right now, the hearts can tend to close.
Yes.
Our hearts can become so fearful or worried that we can close off even to God. Is there a specific practice you might recommend to someone who might feel this way, that their heart is closed even to the divine?
Yes, the heart can close in varying degrees. In fact, the Quran has an insight. It says that when there is chronic anger, hopelessness, helplessness, hate, sorrow, if it's chronic, it's not that the eyes become blind, the hearts become blind. When the hearts become blind, how do you open the heart? The answer is simple, but it's very, very difficult, actually. It's only through love. So if somebody is feeling those difficult feelings, and I see who come for that kind of, you might say, counseling, I first validate. I say, every feeling is sacred. And of course, for Muslims, it's a verse from the Quran, all feelings come from God. Please give yourself permission to feel those feelings. So for example, I've had people come to me for therapy who said, I'll come and do this work with you on one condition. You never mention the word God. One was a lady who experienced incest, somebody, daughter was murdered, etc., etc. Don't mention the word God, but this practice of sacred holding, this feeling that you're having of hate, I want to kill that person. It's okay. It's just a feeling. That feeling is sacred. Allow yourself to feel it. Little by little. Where do you feel it? Locate it. Just be present with it. Just be present with it and go through those steps. And I can tell you, Brother Matt, these same people, once they have done sacred holding, little, and the key words are little by little, and always with compassion for yourself, these same people who said, I never want to hear the word God, have become such passionate, shall I say, devotees of God, that I avoid them whenever I meet them, because they're always talking about God, 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 God. I remember this wonderful Sufi song, oh God, save me from all these God lovers. But the key is to honor the feelings, no matter what they are, always with compassion and mercy. And they are just begging to be acknowledged, begging to be integrated to the whole, WHOLE. And once they do, they become transformed.
What a generous offering. Uh, God, we don't have to name God right now.
Yes,
Don't
yes,
worry
yes.
about that. God will be fine. Yeah.
None of us know what God is. You know, we can say all things about God, but none of us know what God is. I mean, atheists and agnostics, I believe, have the greatest faith in God. They just call God by a different name: truth, justice, compassion, service. That's God.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Kelly asked if you could just say again real quick about the pen and ink meeting the paper.
Oh, only when ink joins with a pen, only when ink joins with a pen can the blank paper say something. That's by Rumi.
Okay. And just a reminder, this is being recorded and it will be on our YouTube channel forever after this. So feel free to go back and watch again and share with anybody who you might think would receive nourishment from this. Ruth again asks, when I sit in silence with the Holy Mystery, I see images and colors. I can relate to visual artists. Sometimes I draw them, sometimes I don't know what to do with them. Any wisdom about what to do with what I see in my heart?
I would say, oh, I wish I could sense that. I would just say, oh, Spirit, whatever your belief system is, thank you. I'm so grateful for this. I am so grateful. Because I think this, in a very divine way, is coloring your life by you being open to the colors and those images that come.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
They perfume the heart.
Yeah, they perfume the heart. What a beautiful notion. I love it. Lisa says, I'm struck by how core these practices are in every tradition with some language differences, but the essence is the same. Are you noticing in these days a new kind of convergence across traditions? And if so, what do you make of it?
You know, at the core, it's all one. And it's just in different forms. But the most important thing is to practice them. Because see, the danger is that I will take course after course, go to teacher after teacher, but I will not practice them. That's why it's called spiritual practice. So I always tell my friends, I tell myself, you don't have to know a variety of techniques. Just choose one or two, but just do it. Practice it. That is the key.
Mm-hmm. Just do it. Just do it. I've heard that before.
Yeah.
Sorry. Can help myself. Carrie asks, I am formed in the Christian tradition.
Yes.
What do you recommend for study to immerse myself in these practices that take me into other wisdom traditions?
You mean she wants to study other traditions? How to do that, you mean?
I think so. Or maybe, you know, like the previous question, the convergence, where maybe one's Christian tradition overlaps and aligns with the Sufi tradition.
Yes. You know, I'm a Muslim. I'm rooted in Islam. But from my own experience, I find that when I'm open to the beauty and wisdom of other traditions, this waters my Islamic roots, makes me a better Muslim and a more developed human being. You see, I study the Quran. In fact, Houston Smith, who was a great professor of comparative religion, he said, you can look at the Quran from one angle as a Christian or as a Muslim, but if you look at it from different angles also, you have a more complete view of the Quran. So I study the spiritual practices of other traditions, and I integrate that into my Muslim practices and tailor make that. And I find it really is very, very fruitful. So I use, for example, centering prayer in my meditation. I use a Hindu mantra, Hindu chakra meditation. I combine it with my Muslim practices, and I feel that this really ennobles and enriches my spiritual practices.
That's beautiful. Thank you. I'm going to try to roll a couple of questions into a single one. But the question is coming up particularly about negative emotions, and particularly in response to evil and injustice and cruelty. How do you sit with those kinds of emotions, unforgivable acts, and a response to those? And do you have a sense of God's justice?
Well, first of all, I want to talk about difficult feelings coming within myself. Negative thoughts of revenge, hitting out within myself. So let's say I'm experiencing that. It is very critical to become very aware of difficult negative thoughts. Why? Because if they're unchecked, it'll lead to difficult feelings. I want to really strangle that person. It leads to what Sufis call negative imaginary scenarios. And I might think this is just imaginary. This is only happening in the imaginal realm. But you see, all the different realms, imaginative realm or this real realm, they're all interconnected. Number one. And number two, the subconscious does not differentiate between real and imagined. So if those negative imaginary scenarios within myself are unchecked, they manifest in reality, because all the realms are interconnected and the subconscious does not differentiate between fact and fiction. So the moment I become aware of negative imaginary scenarios, I do a spiritual intervention. Brother Jamal, and the different words, neti neti, not real, not real, not this, not that. The Hindus say, the Buddhists say, neti neti. Or I tell myself, letting go, letting go, letting go, not real, not real, not real. So I don't want them to gel into solid negative imaginary scenarios. So I do that spiritual intervention. Brother Jamal, neti neti, letting go, cancel, cancel. The ones who are more cyber savvy, delete, delete. That is important. I say that. Now about others, yes, I'll give an example. Ted Bundy. How do you deal with someone like Ted Bundy? I don't know. And by the way, I've met the parents of Ted Bundy. The mother died recently. Very sweet people. So, in that environment, he had that evil mind. We don't know about these things. So that's why I like the saying of Kabir, who said, protect yourself. Don't allow yourself to be abused. Take the right action. But as you take the right action, I beg you, I implore you, do not keep that person's essence or being out of your heart. And just taking the right action with that discernment, the differentiation between the evil behavior and that sacred essence has the power to shift heaven and earth. The energy with which I'm taking the right action is very critical.
Thank you. A lot to chew on and a lot to practice here, which makes me excited. And maybe in these last couple of minutes, do you have a simple practice that we can close this time with?
Yes. I was just thinking a very simple practice, which is very powerful but difficult to do, is to, especially as we are in these lockdowns, is a very precious Sufi practice of sacralizing every mundane moment. Example, when Prophet Muhammad used to walk through a door, he would say, oh God, please open to me the doors of thy mercy. So these days we have to wash our hands continuously. Can I make it a prayer? As I wash my hands, oh God, please make it a prayer by saying, may these waters purify my hands and make me able to be of service to God's creation. In the nighttime, when I take my clothes off, oh God, these are the layers of my ego I'm peeling off from me. What happens if I put my clothes on back again in the morning? Oh God, these are the mantle of divine protection. If I'm taking a shower, oh God, may these waters purify my being. Can I make sacred through a prayer every single mundane moment? This has been found, and I know through my own experience, to really change one's life dramatically.
Wonderful. Well, maybe we can just take a moment here to just take maybe 30 seconds of silence. And I invite all of you participating to sacralize this moment, to name it in your hearts. And feel free to close your eyes. Take a deep breath. whatever comes to you as a way to name this moment and this space together. Allow that to be imprinted on your heart. And may that sacred name or image or feeling that is imprinted on your heart also remain at the tip of your nostril and in each breath as we go about our day and into our work of companioning one another through these times. Open your eyes. And Brother Jamal, thank you so much for your sharing today. Thank you to everybody who joined us here in the Zoom call and on the YouTube live stream. Again, this video will be available later. If you want to watch it later, send it to others. I want to also invite you to stay tuned for more digital refuge offerings from SDI. We have several amazing webinars coming up. We have more group spiritual direction to come. We'll have more of these town halls. And I know that it's a hard time, but if you are able to donate to our cause of spreading spiritual companionship around the world, you can find the donate button on our website. It's a big purple button if you go to sdistore.org up in the top right. Imam Jamal, we are so blessed by your sharing and by your practices. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And it's been an honor and a joy. Thank you, sir.
An honor and joy for me too. And so thanks, everybody. I'm going to sign off here and stay tuned for more. Thank you for joining us today.
Bye-bye. God bless. Bye-bye.